With LJ Martin playing, BYU has a very clear path to upset Texas Tech. But with Jacob Rodriguez existing, Texas Tech may blow out the Cougars. Here's your ultimate preview on the Big 12 game of the year. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Arizona to Cincinnati to UCF. If you're a fan of the Big 12, your eyes will be tuned into Lubbock, Texas this weekend, Texas Tech and BYU, the game of the year in this conference. Let's do an entire breakdown, a deep preview of the game that could decide who not just goes to the Big 12 championship game, but the college football playoff. We'll start there. And then, what are BYU's keys to an upset win? We'll talk in depth about that, as well as Texas Tech's keys to a blowout over BYU at home. And finally, I want to end the show by saying that BYU and Utah, Baylor, TCU, Kansas State, and Kansas should never be played on Thanksgiving week, should never be played on Rivalry weekend. I know you think I'm an idiot. I thought I was an idiot for having this thought, but I can explain how and why and make it all make sense. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction. Why will BYU win?
BYU, are they being disrespected in this matchup?
10.5 is too many. I mean, I love to go with my best friend, Brett Helton. He's a party animal, and we'll go play blackjack. And as soon as the dealer lays down that 22, he'll say, too many. And this is a classic example of too many. 10.5 points, man. I don't get it. I think in my brain, it's more reasonable for Tech to be favored by 4 or 5, even 6.5. You're like, oh, okay, a touchdown win for Texas Tech, 31-24, and they cover. 10.5 is far more than I expected this line to be. I think the smart bet, no matter which way you look at this, if you're a Texas Tech fan, a BYU fan, if you're a sports bettor, the smart bet here would be on BYU plus 10.5. There's a lot of disrespect going on for Bear Bachmeier, and LJ Martin is playing in this game. The running back for BYU listed at the top of the depth chart. No MOA, it seems. So him having a little bit of relief may not be in the cards, but with Martin in there as one of the best running backs in the Big 12, I think this BYU team has every opportunity to win this game on the road against Texas Tech, and there are plenty of reasons why.
You mentioned the running game, but where else does BYU maybe have advantages in this?
They have the better quarterback of these two. And Baron Morton's a very good quarterback. And when he is healthy, he is one of the best in the Big 12. But you put their numbers together, especially with Bear Bachmeier's ability to run the ball. And both of these guys are similar. The only difference is Bear Bachmeier is 8-0 and Baron Morton is 8-1. And Bear Bachmeier is a freshman, and Morton's had a whole lot of experience in college football as a senior. And it's been incredibly impressive to see the development of Bear Bachmeier. He was really good in game one. He's been really good at each game, but you can see the confidence growing, him getting better and better. And as a true freshman, 18-year-old who was at prom 7 months ago, the kid now is undefeated and has a top 20 QBR in the country at 79 overall. Now for Baron Morton, he's a QBR of 68.7. That's full America. If he was healthy the whole year, maybe a little bit better. And he hasn't been as turnover prone as I think a lot of people would have expected this year. His 4 interceptions have not been backbreaking for Texas Tech, and Bear Bachmeier certainly has not been turnover prone. 3 interceptions this season, which is far less than you would expect out of a true freshman. If there's a keen advantage opportunity, it's in the quarterback position, whereas Texas Tech is probably deeper running the football than what BYU has. Certainly they are, with LJ Martin really being your only healthy, reliable running back. Texas Tech's got you beat in that category. Both of these teams, Isaiah Glasker or Jack Kelly for BYU, and then Jacob Rodriguez or David Bailey, have stars on the defensive side of the ball. If you're really looking for an advantage BYU from a player standpoint, it's the all-important quarterback position. And then analytically, TJ, The advantage is going to be here. Defensively, BYU is number 52 in the country against the run in an EPA, efficiency metric EPA, number 52 against the run in America. Texas Tech, number 109 in efficiency running the football offensively. So while they've ran the ball well, namely against their worst opponents they played this season, the inability to run the ball consistently per the EPA metrics points toward BYU having an easier day stopping the run and then focusing on Baron Morton and trying to qualm that tough pass game of Texas Tech.
When you look at this game, is there a trench advantage?
I would have told you 3 weeks ago, before I saw BYU in person, yes. I would have said the Texas Tech, who has the best defensive line maybe in all of America, they're battling injuries. Both of these teams are battling injuries. That's one thing I've seen a lot of people talk about, like, oh, BYU is healthier. They're coming off a bye week, so it gives me a little more confidence, a little bit more confidence that BYU will be okay. If you want to try to find the advantage, Texas Tech's D-line is still up there, but BYU's offensive line and the complement of Bear Bachmeier being able to run the ball and be a pretty smart quarterback has been incredible to see their development. I didn't have them in the top half of the Big 12, D-line wise or O-line wise, to start the year. And then I got to watch the defensive line of BYU come up big late in the game against Utah, grab a couple sacks against Devin Dampier. And I got to watch the BYU offensive line protect Bear Bachmeier to the extent where Bachmeier could run and open up his legs to be able to give BYU a better opportunity in the run game with their QB. Trenches wise, I would have said Texas Tech has vast advantage in this game, but now I just don't know. I think it's a lot more even than maybe I expected it to be, again, having seen BYU in person.
Contrasting styles here. Not that BYU has gone from a program perspective, not necessarily just within the game, but Texas Tech, very flamboyant with going out and, hey, we're going to spend this money, and nothing wrong with that. If you got to spend it, I wish my program would do the same. BYU, not that they've not used the portal, they certainly have, but just not to the same extent that Texas Tech did. BYU a little more, I don't want to say that TTU doesn't develop, but more homegrown guys, more guys that they've had in multiple years from an overall perspective. Does something like that factor in when you just look at variance from week to week? Are we still kind of scratching our head with the result that Texas Tech had against Arizona State? Like, is there an opportunity for just there to be more variance, and maybe BYU, you know, that they're a little bit more of a consistent week to week product?
Yeah, I do think that BYU at 19-2 over the last 2 years should get more respect. We should be talking more about how BYU is the most consistent team, arguably, in college football the last two regular seasons. This is a BYU squad that has done it defensively, primarily with the defensive coordinator, Jay Hill, and made teams look silly when it matters most. BYU typically wins that middle 8, last 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes of the second half, and more importantly, they win the final 4. Those last 4 minutes of the game have been BYU this season. Comeback wins against Colorado, comeback win against Iowa State, a dominant comeback win without their starting quarterback, LJ Martin, over Iowa State was very impressive. Comeback in overtime against an Arizona team that's still pretty sneaky, has a good offense. This is a BYU team that has consistently done one thing, and that's win. Even when it's ugly, even when they're down, they find a way to win games. Here are some of the stats and analytics I look at that also help BYU. Both teams very good defensively on third down. Texas Tech's 18th in the country, allowing opponents to convert 32%. BYU, 16th in the country, allowing them to convert about 32%. Both teams super strong on the turnover margin. BYU being 5th in the nation at plus 10. Texas Tech 10th in the nation. You see a lot of these national rankings. BYU is like 1, 2, 3 spots better than Texas Tech in most of them. But this is where I really think BYU could take advantage against Texas Tech. The Red Raiders, 88th in the country in average time of possession, 29 minutes and 13 seconds. BYU is 20th, 32 minutes and 11 seconds. Now, there's a small caveat to that. A big portion of why that disparity is so large is because Texas Tech is blowing out these games. They're scoring on 3 plays offensively. They're just too good for that number to be a strong time of possession. At the same time, though, look at the loss against Arizona State. And I see where BYU could run the ball well, have a couple possessions that go 6.5, 7 minutes, and that's where the Cougars find a way to win if they keep this thing low scoring.
If BYU wins, you just mentioned some of it. What specifically, if you had to point at one thing, what went right for the Cougars?
They turned over Baron Morton twice. Baron Morton throws 2 interceptions, or he throws a pick and he fumbles, and BYU kept from turning the ball over. Jacob Rodriguez, I've mentioned this, has forced 7 fumbles himself this year. The star linebacker for Texas Tech, 7 fumbles.
That's insane. Just pause there for a minute. That's not a real stat. 7 picks is insane. Forcing a fumble is ridiculous. Forcing 4 is wow, what a year. 7 is not real. You're making it up.
We're talking about it's so nuts. I mean, again, he should probably be in the Heisman conversation. If Manti Te'o was, then certainly. And this guy's girlfriend's real. That's a big difference there too. His wife, actually, Jacob Rodriguez's wife, who serves the United States in the military. I mean, this guy is just the all-American, perfect representation of college football. And again, some teams in the country want to force 7 fumbles. He's done it himself with his right or left arm. If BYU wins, it's because they kept Jacob Rodriguez from pulling the football away, and they forced Baron Morton into a couple picks. That today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is exactly where I go during the college basketball season. It's back. I love the round orange ball. It makes me very happy. And it's here. And with the NBA back as well, there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets. Everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Keeps the game exciting, especially when your team is making a late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving customers $300 in bonus bets. New customers, $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
We focused on the Cougars in our first segment. Now we're talking about the Red Raiders. We talked about this in the first segment. Maybe Texas Tech doesn't deserve to be favored by as much as they are, not to upset the fans out there, but does deserve to be favored based on what they've done so far this year and how impressive their wins have been despite the one blemish.
Yeah, there's an avenue where Texas Tech wins this game in blowout fashion, for sure. As much as we can talk about BYU upsetting the Red Raiders, there is a real way that we look up at the end of the fourth quarter and say, wow, BYU kept it close for two quarters, for a half, but Texas Tech was just too much, and the final score ends up being 41-21 Red Raiders. There's absolutely a way that happens. In 10.5, we all look back and say, well, 10.5 was right. Texas Tech is a double-digit favorite against BYU right now, and if that holds true, I don't think Vegas would be shocked. There's a reason that spread is 10.5. This is the best team on paper still in the Big 12 Conference, and I wish they would have beaten Arizona State. I wish they wouldn't have that blemish. It would look even better if BYU won or lost to Texas Tech had they not lost 3 games ago on the road, 26-22, without Baron Morton. So let's consider if they have their starting quarterback, Tech probably wins that game. At least that's the way the SEC wants to pitch these things at you. If they have all their players healthy, they'd win all their games. And that loss is reminiscent, actually even a better loss than Texas losing to Florida, and we don't punish them, or Notre Dame losing to Miami. Starts to feel pretty similar to how that loss looks for the Fighting Irish. This is a Texas Tech team that dropped the game. They've got a blemish, but it doesn't mean they're not, on paper, the best team in the Big 12 right now. And if you're looking for a second best team in the Big 12, or arguably a number one team right there with them, it's BYU. These are the top 2 teams in the conference squaring off. And might I say, I've been blown away, super impressed. There's not a Texas Tech hate week. It's not a BYU hate week. These two fan bases seem like tiredly respectful. Like they're both like, shoot, I hate that we have to play you, because they seem to like each other. They seem to be rooting for each other most weeks, so that the Big 12 is amplified and elevated. This week feels like 2 fan bases that know ball. They respect each other, and they're sitting there thinking, shoot, man, I'm sorry, it's got to be us fighting for a spot in the Big 12 championship, fighting for a spot in the college football playoff. But I think both these teams would agree they are good enough to be college football playoff squads when all is said and done, no matter what happens this week.
Going major big picture here, is the best thing for the Big 12 right now for Texas Tech to win this in a close one and then one more close game in the Big 12 championship so that both could get in?
Yeah, I think what you're going to tell a BYU fan would be, and maybe a Texas Tech fan, you could say, look, if you lose this one, we'll let you win the Big 12 championship game. And in that event, if we get a rematch of this game and the score flips, you're both going to the college football playoff. Nobody wants to lose. No one wants to sign up to lose, but my message to BYU fans is, hey, if I could tell you that a loss this week, 27-24, a loss this week, 21-20, ensures that you go to the Big 12 title, win the conference championship, and you and Texas Tech both get in. Like, you just say, hey, look, I promise we'll let you win the rest of your games. The rest of it, like, we'll get you in there. Just need you to lose this one. That's kind of what Brett Yormark is asking for here. He needs Texas Tech, in essence, to win this game so the Big 12 can stay in the good graces at the top 10. Otherwise, in the event BYU wins this game, TJ, 44-14 over Texas Tech, what happens is the Red Raiders no longer have national respect. BYU is now the number 6 team in the country, sure, but you're only getting one team into the college football playoff. The Big 12 is limited to that. Otherwise, and this is the only other scenario in which a BYU win would really help you, if the Cougars win this week, we'll say 27-24, flip a score that I think the final score will be Texas Tech in favor, in my opinion. But let's say BYU wins it by 3 points. They meet again in Arlington, 10-2 Texas Tech, 12-0 BYU. In the event that Tech wins that game at 11-1, they're locked into the playoff, actually. And BYU, I think, would still host a game in the college football playoff. And that's not a bad spot to be in for the Big 12. There really are very few ways, what I'm trying to say here is very few ways for the conference overall to take a loss, take one off the chin in this game because of how big it is and both these teams being so high up in college football.
I asked you this on the BYU side, so I'll ask you here on the Texas Tech side. Could be somewhat repetitive. If you watched both videos, we apologize. But biggest advantage for Texas Tech in this thing?
Biggest advantage for Texas Tech is having a guy like Jacob Rodriguez. Look, they're repetitive my ass. I will wax poetic about Jacob Rodriguez as long as it takes until he's actually put into the Heisman conversation. David Bailey is elite. We can look at the Texas Tech defense and understand how those two guys make the whole thing go. And Bailey had another sack again against Kansas State in a game where he wasn't as effective as we're used to seeing him. Had 3 sacks against Kansas a few weeks ago. But it starts with Jacob Rodriguez. 74 tackles is nuts. I've mentioned 7 forced fumbles. There are college football teams that wish to have that. 2 interceptions. He is a walking stat. Defensively, Jacob Rodriguez and Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker are both very good for BYU. They each deserve a lot of credit in their own right. Kelly leads the team in sacks. They're 2 of the best linebackers in college football. I think all 3 of those guys should be Kelly, Glasker, Rodriguez, drafted in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. But Rodriguez is the difference maker. He himself, and of course it's a cop-out sometimes to say, well, the team that turns it over more is going to lose. But he's a guy that could force a fumble and get an interception against BYU and close the book on the Cougars, especially if it's a very close game. If you turn the ball over, it's just not going to behoove your team in what should be a tight contest. I think the way I see this, that if Texas Tech's going to win, especially in a blowout, it's because you saw Jacob Rodriguez have a complete difference in the game in a turnover category. And I don't know if that result would shock anyone. Rodriguez playing super well.
We've danced around this a little bit, but Texas Tech does have the blemish on their resume. What do they need to do better, differently, improve upon, which they've won games since then? So I'm not saying this is like a lingering effect, but what do they need to do differently or limit? And turnovers obviously being a big thing. You just mentioned that, but what else can they do to ensure that they don't take another blemish right here, like they did against Arizona State?
Yeah, the big key for me is the ability for Texas Tech to ensure that their linebackers truly settle in. Again, I mentioned Rodriguez. You go to Ben Roberts, who's also incredible. John Curry is very good. It may be the best linebacking core, as much as we wax poetic about the D-line, the best linebacking core in all of college football. They go toe-to-toe with anybody in the SEC. You get those guys hot, they can cover the entire field. They can sack the quarterback. They can play in coverage against a tight end if needed. That's where Texas Tech, against a team like BYU, is going to have to be so good. And if I go back to that Arizona State game, maybe the biggest key when we're comparing the Tech schedule to what they have coming up with BYU or the rest of the way, keep Bear Morton healthy. That's number one. Maybe the biggest tell in that loss to Arizona State is that when Baron Morton goes out and there's already film out there on Will Hammond, you're going to need Morton to stay in this game because Will Hammond couldn't get it done against Arizona State. 22 for 37. Not very good. Tech running the ball that day, Cameron Dickey, 9 carries, 40 yards. Jacoby Williams, 3 carries, 22 yards. They didn't run the ball well. Their quarterback didn't play well. They played from behind, had to throw the ball too many times, 38 times in total. That's just not going to play well. If Tech gets down in this game, if they get down 10-0, 13-3, 13-7, and they can't establish the run, and they got to throw the ball around the yard, that's when Behren Morton is more susceptible to turning the ball over, obviously, because he's throwing it more. And if you can't establish the run and you're Texas Tech and you try to run the ball so well, then you're looking at BYU and going, shoot, we lost to Arizona State in the exact same way. Our quarterback had to throw the ball too many times, didn't throw the ball well, couldn't establish the run, and we lost 26-22. If you're going to take that blemish and reverse it, Tech needs Behren Morton to stay healthy.
We've talked about Bachmeier a little bit, more so on the BYU side, but BYU has the quarterback advantage here. And
I think so, yeah, I do.
You think about him going on the road, though, as a true freshman in what will be a pretty lit environment. Yeah. Got to play Utah at home, right? That was in Provo. So just thoughts on maybe the crowd impacting things just from a big picture perspective. I know you're super high on Behren, so is everybody else in this country that pays attention to good football. But is there a little bit of concern with him going on the road and playing in this? And can Texas Tech impact him there?
I think Bear's fine with the crowd. I'm sorry to Texas Tech. I wish this was a night game. It'd be so much cooler. Yeah. It's a top 3 atmosphere in the Big 12 Conference right now. It could be number 1. It could be number 2. It's top 3, no doubt. And being out at night, you won't get as much of the effect. So I'm not knocking the Tech crowd. Chris Level, who radio color analyst, to me, we both agreed. This is more like a neutral site game than a night game would be. It's not a neutral site game whatsoever. I think BYU fans will make up 10 or 12% of the stands, but it's going to feel a little more like, oh, good morning, it's 11 a.m., we're kicking off, than an 8 p.m., everybody had all day to drink and party and tailgate. And then we've seen Behr Bachmeier go into a very hostile environment like Colorado, where they were chanting against the religion of BYU. He's played games on the road. Arizona was a decent crowd. Iowa State was a great crowd afternoon game in Ames that Behr was able to go into down double digits and find a way to win. I don't think the crowd is going to rattle the freshman because he's proven that BYU can win on the road. They've won 4 true road games this year, 4 true road games, and out of their 8, that's pretty darn good. I think they'll be okay crowd wise, but Texas Tech is certainly going to bring the heat.
You did this on the BYU segment too, but give me a score on it.
27-24, Texas Tech wins this game. I don't think either team blows it out. I don't think that BYU falters to the point where they get blown out, but I think Texas Tech, I do think they at home are the better team and they win this game by 3. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time's exactly where I go on a weekend like this, where tickets for BYU and Texas Tech are pretty expensive, but they're far less expensive at Game Time, actually. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited about the tailgates, the rivalries, and the game this weekend that is the game of the week in all of the country. The Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. Easiest way to secure last-minute tickets at the best price. Pull up Game Time, couple of taps, see amazing deals, including zone deals. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats. You save big. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, promo code LOCKEDON. College for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time and do it today. It's the Game Time app. Cheapest tickets on the market that I can find with the Game Time app.
Drake, we've talked a ton about BYU and Utah. There has been clamoring for the Holy War to maybe move dates, but you don't think that's a great idea.
Don't move the Holy War. Don't move Baylor and TCU. Do not move Kansas and Kansas State. And there's a very clear reason why. I saw a tweet. And look, you're going to say I'm a terrorist. And I thought that I was a terrorist too when I woke up this morning and had this thought. So bear with me for a second. The reason the Big 12, I've always said Brett Yormark is an idiot for only one thing. Everything else, he's a genius. And it's not having games on rivalry weekend. Here's the problem. TJ, can you come back on the screen? I'm going to do this to you again. I'm going to explain this to you. I need your help as a prop, okay? If BYU starts 8-1, and that one loss is game 9 to Utah, but finishes the season 11-1 on a 2-game win streak, then 3-game win streak, then they're in the good graces of the College Football Playoff Committee. They won 3 in a row, right? Utah, conversely, 8-1 start, lost their 9th game, but they won 3 to end the year. They're 11-1. Playoff committee likes that, right?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, good. It was a very easy question here.
I was just thinking it was so obvious and rhetorical that you were going to keep going.
But what happens? Yeah, usually I do, but I didn't this time. What happens if you're 10-1 and you lose game 11?
Recency bias is a big problem. It's a huge problem. It's why before you even go on, it's why they're talking about putting Notre Dame ahead of Miami.
Yes.
It's like, I know we're Big 12 right now, but which I don't like Miami. I mean, but they beat them head to head. But because that game happened in August, we forget about it.
So what have you done for me lately? Like, what we should do in an ideal world, Texas Tech's first game of the year is against Utah. Their second game of the year is against BYU. And the rest of their games are against UCF, West Virginia, Oklahoma State. Because what we learned with Notre Dame is the more you win late, what have you done for me lately? It's not, well, they lost a game earlier this year. No, it's, they're playing so well right now. So if we play the biggest games in this conference, if we have the top 10 teams square off, then the committee can meet in a room on a Tuesday and say, you know what? They just lost that game. 11-1 can be removed because we just saw them lose. They're not playing their best football. 10-2 team can be removed because they're not playing their best football. Texas loses 2 games early in their schedule, even a bad loss to Florida. They're already back to number 13 in the country. Why? Because all you have to do is rattle 2, 3, 4 wins off in a row. And the second you do that, you're back in the good graces of the College Football Playoff Committee. It really only makes sense. They should play Alabama, LSU, Alabama, Georgia, week 4 every year. Make it the first game, because by the time we get to rivalry weekend, we, in essence, forget about everything else. It's not what you did 8 weeks ago. That loss just doesn't count anymore. Notre Dame against Northern Illinois. That loss just didn't have to count anymore. If they had lost to Northern Illinois on the last game of the year, you might get left out of the college football playoff. It sucks. Now, look, this is me saying that as somebody who loves the sport. It does suck to not have that feeling. I remember waking up as a kid on Saturday after Thanksgiving thinking, wow, today is the day. Today we get my favorite team playing its rival on the road. College game days there. There's that pomp and circumstance, and it's a better experience for the fans. But ultimately, if you want more teams in the college football playoff, if you yourself, like, how devastated would BYU fans be or Utah fans be if they're both 10-1 going into that game, and the loser, who, if they'd lost that game, right, 8 weeks prior, you lose, it doesn't matter. But if you lose in the last weekend of the year, we've designed this whole system where now we have an excuse to keep you out. It really, if you boil it down that way, it's only common sense that you wouldn't have a rivalry week if you're the Big 12, because if you do, you're giving yourself an open opportunity to lose more games that are high profile.
Eliminate half your teams.
Yes.
I mean, and look at the teams now. Some of them are out of conference, but look at the games that do happen. LSU, you mentioned LSU, Arkansas, right? Yeah. LSU's up and humming. That's not one. Auburn, Alabama. That's not one that is going to eliminate somebody.
It's a free win. You know?
I mean, look outside of it. Georgia Tech. I know that's not even in conference, but that's a rival that Georgia Tech, it's
one-sided.
Great. Now, Florida State's a little bit of an exception, and South Carolina, Clemson for a long time. The different teams have dominated both sides of that. But you look at the rivalries that are happening. Now, Michigan, Ohio State, I'll give them credit. That is one that continues to be a big deal. But we've also seen that be one that doesn't matter, where both teams can win or lose that game and still go on and go to the playoff. We've seen that multiple times. And again, that it probably has a lot to do with brand bias. But you're so right. Quality losses, which Utah losing to BYU is a quality loss. Whoever loses this game this weekend between Texas Tech and BYU is a quality loss, no matter what the committee says or thinks or does with their rankings the next week. Quality losses don't matter as much. One, if you're not in the SEC or Big Ten somewhat. And they certainly don't matter after November 15th. There's no such thing as a quality loss the weekend of Thanksgiving, because we are too, and I understand recency bias. I tell you a joke right now, you laugh, man, that's the best joke you've ever told. It's probably not. Mm-hmm. It's probably not. You go see a movie, you really like it. Oh, that's the best movie I've ever seen. It's probably not. It's probably not. And then you get 2 months away from it and you say, oh, that movie was good, but not great. That joke was good, but not as good as I thought. You take a drink of something. Oh, this is the best Coke I've ever had. This is the best drink I've ever had. Whatever. We do that. It's natural. I'm not blaming the community. I mean, I hate the committee, but it's very natural to have recency bias. The problem with our sport is the subjective rankings. We've talked about that forever. We don't look at FPI or S&P Plus or Connolly's ratings or this, that, and the other. We look at what feels good. We go off the vibes. We go off of, oh man, this team's playing well right now. And this team's playing. We don't care that they lost to a terrible Florida team. We don't care that they lost to a terrible Northern Illinois team or this team or that team. We feel good. Texas feels good right now. We spent 7 weeks of this college football season talking about how they were dog crap.
Mm-hmm.
And because they've beaten Kentucky and Vandy and Mississippi State. Those are the last 3 wins. I know Vandy's good. Like I'm not trying to take it, but listen to that. They beat Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Vandy in back-to-back weeks, and we have them ranked in the top 15 right now. You think about that? Like recency bias does mean a lot. Now, I think they lose to Georgia. I think they probably lose to A&M too. So we will get rid of the Texas problem, but the Big 12 doesn't get that same benefit of the doubt.
No, they don't. And really the ACC doesn't either. There's something to be said about a game like South Carolina and Clemson, the amount of times it's put South Carolina out of the national conversation. If you play that game 3 like SMU TCU does every year, by the time we got to the end of the year last year, most people couldn't tell you that SMU beat TCU. At the end of the year this year, most people can't tell you that SMU lost to TCU because it's such this afterthought and foreign thing that happened so long ago. Remember that one time we thought Notre Dame was terrible? We were week 3 where they were the worst team in the world? Yeah. We're now 8 weeks removed from that. And everybody thinks Notre Dame is the bee's knees. And those 2 losses don't count. They just genuinely don't count at all. That's where rivalry weekend could hurt a conference like the Big 12 that needs to, okay, this year, and I get you lose a little bit of the luster for it, way better for BYU that they're playing a UCF during their last game. Way better for a Utah that they would play a West Virginia. Way better for a Texas Tech that they could play an Oklahoma State. That only helps you win more games late in the season to go to the college football playoff. I've gone on your show 2 or 3 times and said that Brett Yormark is a coward for not having a rivalry weekend, but I was in the shower today and something clicked and I was like, shoot, it would ruin the Big 12. We would lose college football playoff teams if the best teams were all squaring off that last weekend. This is probably what's best until we get the same respect that the SEC gets.
It is frustrating, and we talked about this game from the BYU perspective and the Texas Tech perspective. A large part of me is worried for the loser of this game. Now they'll have an opportunity if depending on who wins, who loses, who gets to Arlington. I understand all that. When 2 SEC teams play and they're both in the same situation, there's one combined loss maybe between them. It's not a college football playoff eliminator.
Yeah.
Game. It's just not. And I worry a little bit. Now, if it's BYU, of course, they're not eliminated. If it's Texas Tech, there's a little bit of concern, I'm sure, because they need to do some work to get back into it. But man, there is some worry with the way that this all shakes out and the way that we are going to penalize. I can tell. I know what the committee is going to do. We've got an undefeated BYU team, and they're not getting respect. If they lose this game, they're going to get dropped. They're going to plummet. I just know they will. Now, they'll have an opportunity. They'll have 3 games left. They'll have the Big 12 championship because they'll just have the one loss. They can rewrite the narrative, rewrite the story. But you're right. For a conference like the Big 12, you've got to be creative. And I agree with you. I think they should leave it the way that it is right now. Florida State plays Miami middle of the year. They play Clemson in the middle of the year. Now, those games haven't meant anything for a couple of years. I get that. But you don't see the ACC schedule in there. Listen, I don't like to give the ACC any credit. You very rarely see the ACC schedule in games with. Now, there's a lot of built-in rivalries. We talked about Louisville, Kentucky, South Carolina, Clemson, all those. You very rarely see them give Florida State a tragically hard game with 2 weeks ago, or Miami a tragically. So they do that pretty well. And the Big 12 needs to continue it as well.
Yeah. It's sad because I do love rivalry weekend, but you know what? Brett Yormark, right again. He nailed it.
I also love every single weekend. Week 0, I love it.
Awesome.
Week 16, love Army, Navy. I wish they'd put playoff games on that so that we weren't having it past, MLK Day, but I love every weekend. So I will say that I love all of them. They're like my children. Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work?
At Locked On Big 12. I've been locked out of my Twitter account for some reason. The at Drake C. Toll one, there were bad tweets anyway. So maybe I'll recover the Drake C. Toll one. But right now, Locked On Big 12, wherever you find your podcasts as well.
Maybe that kid that dressed up as you for Halloween stole your Twitter account. Did you think about that? You reported that to the authorities?
Honestly, the kid can have it. Whatever.
Drake C. Toll brought to you by a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Love it, TJ.